Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Elena Kagan, a real threat to our future on the United States Supreme Court. I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. Joining me is Sean Akers, dean of the Helms School of Government at Liberty University and director of cultural affairs for Liberty Counsel. Sean, we've been talking about Elena Kagan. We have information about her on the Liberty Counsel website, lc.org. You can also call 800-671-1776 for more information. I would urge you to go to the Liberty Counsel website, lc.org. Look at all the material that we have there right on the front page, and then also sign up for the Grassroots Action email. That is an email where you can literally be very involved and join hundreds of thousands of other people to voice your position not only on this but other issues all over the country, particularly on issues that affect our family, faith, and freedom. Let's talk today about her position on international law. She, while being the dean of Harvard Law School, and by the way, let me have a footnote here. She's never served on the court. She, up until 2009, never argued a case before any court at any level. The first time that she ever argued a case at any court at any level was after she was confirmed as Solicitor General, and there she argued 6 cases. And as Solicitor General, you typically argue, you don't argue cases that you've been involved with from the beginning. It's just a case that comes up and the government defends. So she's had 6 oral arguments at the U.S. Supreme Court, taken unusual positions in these cases, never served on a bench, never had any real legal experience other than working in the government. So she doesn't have any experience to serve there. But then now, while dean of Harvard, she changed the entire, not only curriculum, but approach to law to international law so that her students that she was preparing could use international law as a means to change and affect domestic American law. And in that process, I think this is one example of where her thinking is. Constitutional law, which is required in almost every law school in the country because it's tested on the bar exam, she no longer required it. It's an elective. International law, which virtually every law school that offers it, it's an elective, it's not a requirement, is now a required course. So international law is a required course. Constitutional law is not a required course. It's an elective. The obvious conclusion is pretty straightforward.
You know, Matt, just hearing it put in those terms is staggering and speaks more than we have time to speak in this entire program. When you make, I think that would probably be the synopsis of this entire appointment, is that the Constitution is optional. Right. Because what you've got here is a lady who literally made that the way of Harvard law, that Constitution, that the United States Constitution is optional, but you will see yourself as a citizen of the world, and we will look outside to find out how we're going to interpret our own laws here. That's a very dangerous precedent.
And in 2007, Elena Kagan put out a press release as dean of Harvard Law School praising this new approach and suggesting that all the other schools in the country ought to follow this approach. And hopefully Harvard will be basically so influential that it'll change the whole landscape of legal education so that students are required to take international law, not required to take constitutional law, and use international law, foreign courts, foreign laws, as a means to interpret our own United States Constitution. She is a transnationalist, which Barack Obama is, which the Harold Koh is, that he also nominated for another position. So she is a transnationalist that will use international law to reinterpret our Constitution and to use that as precedent for changing the direction of America.
And let's look at what that actually means, Matt. We've talked about this a lot in the recent past, dealing with things like hate crimes legislation. When we have very real pieces of legislation here that in the United States may not have much precedent to support them, and you say, how is this law really going to be applied? If you look to how other countries apply things like hate speech and hate crimes legislation in their own places. When you can't speak out against, when you can't even criticize something that may have a Muslim connection, or you can't speak out in support of traditional marriage without being called a hate monger in certain societies, if you're looking into those societies to pull out their case law and their policy to decide how ours should be interpreted, you can see the slippery slope and the very dangerous predicament that we place ourselves in.
Well, in her particular situation, take another example, homosexual marriage or homosexuality. She could easily take an example from the European Court of Human Rights or some other foreign judicial decision and use that to say, well, the emerging trend in these other countries is to give rights to homosexual behavior, to give rights to homosexual marriage, and therefore we ought to follow them and become just as progressive as they are. Now, she won't choose the other countries that have laws against homosexuality or that don't support homosexual marriage, but she'll choose the ones that she thinks we ought to be progressive and that they're getting ahead of us, and therefore we need to lead the way and be part of this progressive movement. That's what she would do with this very important issue of homosexuality or homosexual marriage.
Another one, our friend Frank Gaffney is very quick to point out that in places, for instance, right now, a man named Geert Wilders put out a documentary that was critical of Sharia law. He has been placed on trial for hate speech because he was critical of that religion. When you see us bending over backwards, when the chief officer of NASA says that the NASA's main goal under the Obama administration is to reach out to Muslim nations, how far are we from looking at the same laws that seek to convict Geert Wilders when you run into the same issues here?